Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us tonight are the Sun's football reporter Jack Rossa and the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run everyone through the back pages, starting with The Guardian. Their back page has the Arsenal players celebrating with David Raya after his wonder saves earned them a goalless draw with Atalanta in Bergamo. The Sun's web pages captured a great angle of the second of Raya's two saves. They call it an underwhelming start to the Gunners' Euro campaign. There's more on Arsenal in the Times, along with an angry Steve Cooper on what he calls human error around the VAR decision that allowed Crystal Palace a goal against his Leicester team last weekend. They also cover a row around supposedly racist language used by F1 ruler Mohammed Ben Sulayem and Lewis Hamilton's reaction. Anthony Joshua's Wembley showdown with Daniel Dubois is on the horizon, and the Telegraph reports this could be the fight to lift AJ out of Tyson Fury's shadow. OK, we're going to start with The Guardian then, David, and the Arsenal campaign. Raya's penalty, heroic seal point in Italy. I mean, firstly, what did you make of their performance? And then secondly, a word for the keeper.
Yeah, the performance, David, was mature. Many Arsenal teams in recent years would have gone there and lost. We know Atalanta are a fantastic team under Gasperini. They're the Europa League champions. They've really established themselves at the top table of European football, and the emotion and atmosphere of being back in their stadium that's been redeveloped for a big night like this is no easy task. And I think the way in which Arsenal have risen under Arteta is now being exhibited. They depleted by the loss of Martin Odegaard, had the North London derby. On Sunday, they've got Manchester City to come, and yet they go to such a tough place and they managed to start with a draw. It could have been a victory given the chances they had, Saka and Martinelli. It could have been a defeat given the Raya heroics, but I don't think they'll be displeased with that. On to your point about Raya, that was absolutely sensational. It's up there with the best saves I think we've ever seen in terms of a double save. Not for the first time this season. Aston Villa away, you'll remember Ollie Watkins. Some other fine moments. I think that's 4 clean sheets in 5 matches. He's conceded just 1 goal all season. And to think many people were questioning the signing of Raya, that looks a bit ill-judged now, because he is absolutely fundamental to what Arsenal and Mikel Arteta are doing. That's to take nothing away from the debate with Aaron Ramsdale, who's a fine goalkeeper in his own right. And Raya has made mistakes, especially in the early days when there was all that scrutiny. But I think it's starting to look a bargain of a signing. And he's 29 years old. He's going to be Arsenal's number 1 by the looks of it for many years to come.
Yeah, I mean, we're just looking at your paper, Jack. The Sun, Raya's the hero once more with sensational double save. Just want to pick up on what David was saying there about when that signing was made. A lot of people kind of questioning it because they had Aaron Ramsdale. But does this show just how ruthless Mikel Arteta is, and that steel that Raya has given the side?
Yeah, certainly. He's definitely grown into the position David mentioned there. A few mistakes and ricks at the start of his Arsenal career, but he really made that position his own fairly quickly last season. And there was a lot of noise, obviously, when they signed him on loan from Brentford last year, and maybe rightfully so. There was a lot of concern that it might upset the camp. Aaron Ramsdale had been a very good player for Arsenal. It's a surprise that he's had to go to a team like Southampton after the performances that he put in. You would have thought there would have been bigger clubs around for him, but when you're in positions like these, and it's Arteta spoke recently when he signed his new contract about small things making a difference and really turning them into a team that can win, and it is those judgment calls that you have to make to get over the line. And it's moments like this tonight, and like David mentioned against Aston Villa, that they'll look back at and credit as to why they made that decision. A hard decision, a brutal decision, really considering how well settled Aaron Ramsdale was there, but one that really could pay off for them. And I think so much is made over how good a defensive unit Arsenal have become. And no doubt having someone like Raya behind them, the confidence he must give the defensive pair in front of him plays a big part in that. So he's been an absolutely fantastic signing, and it was an incredible save tonight.
Yeah, David, you called it a mature performance tonight. I don't know what you call the win over Spurs on Sunday, kind of gritty, I guess. That's an away game. This was an away game. And then they travel to the champions on Sunday for another, about as tough as it gets, away game. We'll find out a lot about Arsenal kind of post-Sunday and view this week, I think, as potentially as quite pivotal in their season, albeit so early.
Yeah, I don't remember many tougher weeks for a team sort of challenging towards the top so early in the season. And this is a test of their mettle, their resolve. I mean, there's a long season ahead, and so there'll be a lot of ups, downs, trials, tribulations, highs and lows along the way. But you know, this is no mean feat if Arsenal come through it in the shape that they want to. So it's sort of a win that they would have been backed by many to lose at Tottenham, so that was something gained. Then now the draw at Atalanta, where people could have seen them slipping up, and I think they'll go to Manchester City in high spirits, to be honest. And yes, they've got Martin Odegaard missing, but it looks like Kevin De Bruyne will be out for Manchester City. City obviously having a draw of their own, which would be a little bit disappointing, and all the scrutiny around them and the club and the FFP case at the moment. Maybe Arsenal will fancy their chances of getting a result in this earlier part of the season. City have been sensational, but they tend to start the season a bit slower than they finish it. And I don't think these days Arsenal will be fazed by going to City away. And that, again, is testament to how far they've come. It should be a really good game at the Etihad, and what a psychological boost it would be for Arsenal to actually inflict a bit of damage on them. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, and obviously there's the threat of somebody like Erling Haaland, but you know, it's a massive week for them and Arteta, so soon after him signing his new contract, and they'll hope to come out of it in really good shape.
Yeah, Jack, David just mentioned it. The Mirror reporting it, and they're saying that Kevin De Bruyne is out of Sunday's game with a groin strain. If he's missing, that kind of, I guess, cancels out the Odegaard injury, and it's a significant blow to City.
It is a big blow, but I think the difference there really is that City have shown over the years when they lose important players, they've got a squad that is really capable of stepping up and replacing those figures. They lost De Bruyne for a long time in the past. They lost Haaland for a bit last season, and people stood up and were counted. Players like Phil Foden had an incredible year and really got them going. And I think Arsenal, you look at the way they've played at Tottenham and then at Atalanta tonight, and there's still a few questions to be asked in terms of what they do going forward. They're incredible defensively, and you would back them if they go to Manchester City and nick a goal to really see that out and get a fantastic result. But I think there are lots of questions to be asked in terms of what they're doing on the ball without Martin Odegaard. They were a bit stodgy at times going forward. Declan Rice has already said to the TV over there that they could be 10 or 15 times better on the ball. They weren't too fluent going forward, and it puts pressure on the chances you create. You know, the one for Martinelli at the end when he was slipped through by Sterling and put it over and didn't quite have the composure to put it away. If you're not creating enough and not keeping that pressure on, it adds the pressure to the individual in moments like that. So while it's a bonus for them that Manchester City won't have Kevin De Bruyne, they'll be fully aware of the players that could step in and pose a real threat to them.
OK, Manchester City against Arsenal, of course. Second part of Super Sunday should be a cracking match. Let's move on to Steve Cooper, the front of the Times. David says Cooper VAR images false. Wouldn't be a back pages tonight without VAR raising its head. And Steve Cooper, the latest manager to have a pop at it. I mean, the pictures, the angles did seem a bit strange. You can see where he was coming from.
Yeah, he was really strident in his press conference, and it does feel like Leicester have a bit of siege mentality at the moment after their financial fair play PSR victory over the Premier League, although to be continued if they end up back in the Championship, and they'll certainly hope not, because it sounds like the EFL may look to punish them after all. But yeah, Leicester kind of fighting everybody at the moment, and Steve Cooper has taken it to the PGMOL. It's a really tough call because of this point of contact issue, and I guess it's never going to be perfect. It should be better later in the season if indeed they do bring in the semi-automated offsides, which is the plan. I don't really know why it's not here already when it's already being used in international tournaments. and I think the Champions League too. And yeah, the debate will seemingly rage. It emerges that Leicester had a meeting with the PGMOL. They didn't get an answer to their the evidence that they said they provided to show that the decision was wrong. It was a huge human error, according to Coooper, and that the media should make a bigger deal of it. But at the same time, the PGMOL seem to be standing by their decision and believe it was the correct call. So, yeah, the debate rages on. It will continue to, and unfortunately, there will be incidents yet again this season that overshadow much of the football. And there's so much at stake. You know, Leicester saw themselves pegged back twice, and there could be massive ramifications at the end of the season when you're losing points, and that's determining survival essentially for a club like them. So yeah, and they'll be thinking about things going forward too. You know, if there's a subsequent controversy, will this sort of thing be in the back of their minds? So Steve Coooper may be a bit canny with his comments there too, going forward.
You know, the front of the Telegraph says Coooper goes to war with VAR, and Jack, your paper says Coooper in VAR rage. Does it do managers a lot of good? I mean, David's suggesting perhaps he's sending a bit of a message out there, but I remember Gary O'Neill was bemoaning VAR for much of last season. Forest had a pop at it and Clattenburg was getting involved. It doesn't seem to do them much good in the long run.
No, not really. And instinctively, I don't really like it when managers go quite this far. I mean, it's always been, you know, supporters raging about referees thinking there's a bias, or you know, the way Steve Coooper was talking about it not being in the media or being hidden in the media today almost sounds like there's a bit of a conspiracy element to it there. And I think that's sort of best left to supporters and not fueled by managers and clubs, especially in an era where we've seen stories about Anthony Taylor getting social media abuse. And, you know, he's been chased through an airport before in after a Europa League final. Referees become targets quite easily, and clubs are fueling that and managers fueling that. Isn't very nice. I think maybe the bigger issue for Leicester was that they conceded so late on at Selhurst Park. If that hadn't happened, I don't think this would have been quite so much of an issue. If it was the other way around, Crystal Palace may have been complaining if they'd taken the still from the kick point that Leicester wanted. So instinctively, I sort of like managers to go back to the, you know, we'll hope one goes for us or goes against us, then one comes for us later in the season, and it all levels it out. It demeans everyone a bit acting like this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, David, you made the point that come the end of the season, these moments could be crucial. We don't want to look back on that particular incident. I think that cost us our relegation or avoiding relegation. They got Everton, of course, at the weekend. Leicester, another team who are struggling. That is already looking like the old cliched six-pointer.
Oh, absolutely, and Everton are going to be scrapping for their lives. It's, you know, Sean Dyche has pointed out that they've often got themselves in these sort of difficult positions, and it seems to galvanise them when everybody's writing them off. And I've got to point out that they've played really well in some of their matches or passages of play, but to have a 2-0 advantage turned around to 3-2 defeats consecutively, with everything else that's going on at the club, the financial strife that they've been in, the ownership uncertainty, the stadium on the way, the PSR controversies. When it rains, it seems to pour on Everton. And yeah, Leicester go there. I mean, Leicester have had a pretty decent start to the season by comparison. So I don't think the offside controversy, and let's face it, they still came away from Selhurst Park with a draw, which is creditable, earning a point. But yeah, I think it's a bigger game for Everton. They really need to turn this around. Otherwise, they're going to be in the mire. And it's very early in the season, and so much more can happen. They'll be confident they've got the quality to pull away from it. There's some suggestion that Jarrad Branthwaite could be back from injury pretty soon. And that will be a huge boost, given, you know, they've turned down massive offers for him over the summer, and he's one of the most promising defenders in the country, and boy, do they need him right now. But on the bigger picture, they'll be desperate to avoid relegation, obviously, especially when they go into their amazing-looking new stadium next summer. OK, great stuff. David, Jack, for now, thank you. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages. Telegraph looks ahead to the big fight this weekend and weighs up Anthony Joshua's chances against Daniel Dubois. More on that next.
You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to the Sun's football reporter Jack Rosser and the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein. We're going to go straight to the Telegraph inside spread. Wembley, Battle of Britain can propel Joshua out of Fury shadow. This is the fight, of course, with Daniel Dubois, an all-British fight, Jack, and back at Wembley Stadium where Anthony Joshua has had some of his greatest nights.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. You know, someone who's a very casual boxing fan and only sort of watches the big ones. It's nice to have these big fights back at Wembley. You see them go across the world, and that's the thing with every sport now, going and chasing the money where it is. You can hardly blame people for going to do that. But I think it's going to be a record crowd, or a post-war record crowd at Wembley for this one. And it would be a fantastic way for Anthony Joshua to build his way back. He's been talking about, you know, that he's been through a lot of pain in the last couple of years, and he's someone that, you know, shot to fame and did a huge amount for his sport, and then has had to watch on as others maybe pushed ahead of him, Tyson Fury taking the limelight away from him and having his own troubles. So to come back and make a sort of a statement in his home city at Wembley Stadium in front of a huge crowd would be a massive moment for him and his career, and a big moment for British boxing as well, and hopefully something that convinces promoters to keep these fights in cities like London and at stadiums like Wembley.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that it's at Wembley, David. It's still Riyadh season technically. I think the money's been put up by the Saudis still. But the key point that Gareth A. Davis is kind of making here is that he's trying to kind of emerge a little bit from Fury's shadow, where he's been in the last few years. But given Fury's defeat to Usyk, Fury's fight against Ngannou compared to Joshua's, it's almost like he's been reborn here, Anthony Joshua, and he can emerge as the main man once again.
Yeah, it would be brilliant, and the crowd. It's going to be a post-war record at Wembley of like 96,000 or something. Speaks to the star that Anthony Joshua is, the like of which we've not seen in certainly modern-day British boxing. And I covered a couple of his stadium fights at Cardiff, which were great events, and obviously there was Klitschko at Wembley, which nobody will forget. And he's you know, his story, the Olympic champion, and the way that he took to professional boxing, and he's had his trials and tribulations, which Gareth speaks about in that piece. It really is a modern day sort of sporting fairy tale, and he'll hope that there's still some chapters to be written, even though he's into his 30s now. I mean, the bigger fight is Tyson Fury Usyk in the rematch in December out in Saudi Arabia. But it seems that we may yet get this Joshua Fury fight, which everyone's been baying for. I think Barry Hearn has said it has to be 2025. If it doesn't happen, then it's not going to happen at all. Joshua said that he's not going to wait forever. So this is almost like the precursor, and the fans are going to turn out en masse. It should be a really good night. And he'll hope to see off Dubois. He should, but it's going to be a bit of a clash of two massive physical beasts. But it should be fascinating.
Yeah, it should be fascinating. They've had a little bit of previous, haven't they? They've sparred together before, and Jack Dubois has landed a couple on him, which gives it a little bit of a different dynamic as well. They've got previous, these two.
They have, and I've seen them talking about it today, and I think, you know, that is great to get this going, in that sort of story going into a fight like this, just to get as many eyes on it as possible. But I think, you know, Anthony Joshua is confident that he can land the more important blows when it gets to it on Saturday night. And you know, like David said, we all want that big fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. And if he can put on a show at Wembley in front of such a huge crowd and prove that the appetite is still there, then I think that can only be a good thing, because it would be baffling if we have these two huge figures in the world of heavyweight boxing and at some point can't get them together in a ring.
OK, let's move on to Lewis Hamilton and these comments from the FIA chief, Mohammed Ben Suleiman, David, who's claimed that Formula One drivers should not act like rappers. I think that's reference to the swearing that goes on. And Lewis Hamilton has called this out as a potentially racist slur.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton's never afraid to put his head above the parapet and call out comments or behaviour that he feels is inappropriate. And he's sort of saying here that, you know, it would be a connotation towards black people because he's used the word rappers, and I think he's got a point from what you can see. Now, he did agree with the president on language as a wider point, that it should be cleaned up. Although you do get a bleep because it's played out on delay, but it's just the nature of his comments, and it's not the first time he's had a bit of a run-in with Hamilton. I think there was an incident a couple of years ago when he referenced, or there was a ban on wearing jewellery, and eventually Hamilton reached a compromise where he was allowed to wear his nose ring. So it's a bit of a strange situation. I think Verstappen sort of in a way backed up Hamilton and sort of said that, you know, we're not 5-year-olds. A bit of leeway's got to be given here, but that's really not good. And I do think it's impressive again from Hamilton to stand up for situations like this, which if he's right in what he feels, then it shouldn't really be allowed to pass.
Yeah, there'd be one or two people screaming that they're telly about the kind of rap. Not all rappers are blackjack, and you'd say Eminem and whatever. But does it come, you think, with a bit of a kind of racial connotation, comparing this kind of language and rappers?
It's never really my place to say what Lewis Hamilton would feel, but I think it would do in many people's minds, and especially if you're someone like Lewis Hamilton that will feel that deeper than myself. But I think the big credit has to go to him for standing up and calling it out. It's something he often does and takes a stand on it. And when you're in a position like him, his voice carries a lot of weight, but also it's not like he's a footballer with 11 teammates around him. Of course, he's got the team that he drives with him, but you are almost a standalone figure and a standalone brand. So for him to use that weight and direct it in the right area again against a very significant figure who's got himself into, hot water, from what I'm reading, is maybe a bit generous, but has put his foot in it a few times before. It's good that can be called out. You know, they can agree on where they want to get to and if they want to cut out swearing, but everyone has to do it in a sensible and thoughtful way, really.
Jack, David, great stuff. Thank you very much for your time. In the Telegraph, Travis Head blasts 100 in brutal lesson for England. That all about Australia thrashing England in the One Day International. If you've missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour. And the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.